Alright guys, you know the drill. Blade's been out for a while now, which means I've reached my personal standard of at least 20 hours on a character before I allow myself to make a guide. We don't do those day one guides around here because I think that they're generally a waste of time and generally pretty inaccurate too. You know, most of those day one guides are creators who get early access and, you know, we're really only able to play against bots in those closed early access servers. I don't really do that. I do have to apologize though. I would have loved to have this video out late last week like I normally do, but the day Blade dropped, I had a sponsor reach out that day with a great offer to make a First Descendant guide, so I had to spend the entire weekend working on that project instead, which delayed this video. But either way, I'm ready to dive in and talk about Blade extensively today, and I think you're going to pick up on some really valuable information now that I've like really been through the trenches with him, and I gotta say, like, I freaking love Blade. Oh my gosh, I freaking love this guy. His kit's insane. Look at this. These are my matches from my last couple of sessions of playing him. Like, seriously. This is 34 matches. I'm MVP or SVP on 33 of them. Obviously, I'm not counting that substitution match in there that you see. Well, you know, I was in there for like 30 seconds. But that's freaking nuts, guys. So the point of this video is to get you playing like that. So let's get you fragging. So basic outline for this video will be as follows for those of you who like timestamps, like to skip around, right? First, I will give you a basic summary of his kit, so you know overall what your approach should be. Then I will outline a couple of key skills you need to master, as I think those are the most important things for you to learn from this video. And then we'll get into the weeds, we'll break down entirely his whole kit, piece by piece, ability by ability, and explain how those abilities actually work, because there's a lot that the game does not tell you that I think that you should know, so you can capitalize on these abilities and use them more efficiently. All right, let's go. So here's the basic summation of Blade. Think of Blade as a power drill, okay? I know my analogies are like old man analogies. It's because I'm a 37-year-old homeowner who did facilities maintenance to pay for college. Like, what do you want from me? But when you're drilling into something sturdy, okay, you often have to start with a pre-drill bit of some kind to really soften up the surface, create a guide hole, then you swap bits to your heavy-duty bit to really drill fully into the surface where you already softened it up and go in straight and true, right? That's Blade, okay? We pre-drill, then we swap bits, and we go in hard and fast. You pre-drill by using Blade's shotgun pistol to prime targets and soften them up. That's your pre-drill bit. Then you swap bits by activating his ability Bloodline Awakening. This is E on PC, R1 on controllers. Then, just like a drill, we pull the throttle, we push in. We do that by using Blade's dash ability called Daywalker Dash. That's shift on PC, L1 on controller. Then, just like a drill, it's spin to win after that. So if you're ever wondering what you should be doing as Blade, just remember that cadence. Soften them up with your pistol. Activate your Bloodline Awakening state and then dash in to finish the target off. It's important that you dash after you activate Bloodline Awakening. We'll get into that later. We'll break all that down in detail in this video, don't worry. But that's the basic gist. You'll see me do this a ton in the background gameplay of this video. Soften them, dash in, finish them off. Then either get out or devour another enemy nearby if we're really feeling the momentum and it feels right. Now let's move on to a couple of skills you need to master as Blade. These two skills will be the definitive difference makers between an average Blade and a friggin' scary Blade. Skill number one is the perfect parry. This is for all you Souls games players out there. I played a frick ton of Elden Ring, For Honor, Space Marine 2 in the recent years, so this felt like second nature to me. And we'll break down his parry ability in full detail later in the video, but up front, it's absolutely imperative that you understand this in order to play Blade well. Blade's parry ability, called Scarlet Shroud, you activate it by holding right click on PC or L2 on controller. You can hold this parry for a full 2 seconds to reduce incoming damage by 80%. That's crazy useful on its own, but the perfect parry is different. The perfect parry is a tiny window of 0.4 seconds, not even half a second, at the very beginning of the parry animation. So the second you hit the input, for 0.4 seconds, you will be immovable. That means nothing can CC you in that tiny window. But let me show you what you can do when you master that timing. I've got real gameplay as well as some practice range footage to show it to you in a vacuum. Let's start with the practice range. If you don't panic and you wait just a second, you can parry Jeff's ultimate and not be swallowed. But if you rush it, you'll miss that window, he'll take you out. Big shout out to my wife who demanded that I give her a shout out in return for her services rendered here in this footage. But let's say you're dueling a Thor. You perfect parry his dash and he cannot move you, and that's a big deal. I mean, Thors will try to shove you away from your team, they'll try to pull you back towards their team, or they'll try to shove you out of their lightning realm to hit you with the damage and the slow debuff. We can negate that. Doctor Strange's Eye of Agamotto ultimate is nothing to Blade. Parry it, and then you can go on the offense and shred him to pieces. He's a shield tank and you're a melee hero, so that's not a good matchup for him. Literally anything that CCs you can be perfect parried. Let me show you some actual in-game footage now. Take, for example, this Magic. I perfect parry her twice in a minute. I'm familiar with her kit, her combos, her timing, because she's one of my favorite characters in this game. But I know that her combos usually start with her uppercut dash, the one that pops you up into the air, where she can then kill you before you hit the ground again. That's her whole deal, is to pop you up in the air and do a ton of damage before you hit the ground. That way you have no chance to get away from it. I obviously don't want that to happen to me, so the second it looks like she's got me lined up, that's when I parry. And you'll get this audio feedback that tells you you did it successfully. But also, you just won't get popped up in the air, and that's a bit of a dead giveaway that it worked too. But that completely negates her combo while still consuming her cooldown charge. In fact, after a second parry, when I then kill her and 3 of her other teammates right after her, she just gives up and she changes characters because she's like, this is not working. How about this one? This is super useful to master. Emma Frost is a very popular tank, but you can negate her choke combo entirely, which is amazing. I got very comfortable dueling Emmas like this. I dash in, I start slicing her up, and then as soon as I see that she pops her diamond form, I know the choke is coming right after it. So I parry just after she finishes her animation of switching to diamond form, and sure enough, she tries to choke me, and it fails. I just kind of swat it away like, yeah, we're not doing that, sorry. She chooses at that point to try and back off, but I use the pistol to take her down to critical health. My teammate finishes her off. If you can make an Emma Frost turn her back and run away, you're doing something right. Moments later, in that same match, I dive on this Black Widow. I'm a Lord Widow. I know what her reaction is going to be when a melee character gets into her face. So I get some swings in, and then I preemptively parry, which actually cancels out her spin kick. This is really important, because if she kicks me, she'll get to grapple me, which stuns me, and she gets a free headshot to kill me. So the parry, in that instance, is the one definitive thing that won that fight. If I did not land that parry, she gets the kick, she gets the grapple, she gets the stun, she gets the headshot, I'm dead, right? Now, here's the thing. In a small room, I'm dealing damage, I hear him shout out, it's clobbering time. I don't rush it. I wait to the last moment and I parry. Sure enough, I get to completely negate his ultimate and walk away. My Black Panther teammate was not so lucky, but I wasn't about to die with him, like I owe him nothing. I regroup with my team. We ended up winning this match, and I think that the way that I was parrying abilities was a big factor. So there's the perfect parry, a 0.4 second window that you absolutely need to master, or you will in fact be a subpar Blade. I don't want you to be a subpar Blade. In fact, I want you to perfect parry something and then clip it, and tag me on Twitter with the clip. I am The True Vanguard on Twitter. The True Vanguard. No spaces. And I absolutely want to see your parries, so that's your homework. Skill number 2. This is equally important. So remember that drill analogy. We're calling back to it. I'm calling this skill the stance swap. It's changing the bits, right, that we talked about, remember in the analogy? Or if you're like a fantasy novel reader, think of it like Adolin Kholin, changing from wind stance to stone stance and back and forth. It's going from conservative to aggressive. One thing you'll hopefully notice in the gameplay is how seamlessly I'm swapping from my pistol to my Bloodline Awakening state with the sword, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in the blink of an eye whenever I need to. I'm almost never just holding the sword out without being in Bloodline Awakening, by the way. I'm either out of Bloodline with the pistol or I'm in Bloodline with the sword. And I'm going back and forth from pistol to sword several times in a short amount of, short periods of time. Shoot, shoot, dash in, slice, 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 swap, shoot, shoot, right? It depends on where the enemy is. If they're zipping away, if I'm slicing them up and they zip away and then I switch to the pistol to finish them off, stuff like that. You should always be in one form or the other on purpose at every moment of every match. You have the pistol out if you need healing, or if you're picking up a health pack, or if you're priming targets, especially targets clustered up in a choke point, You're in Bloodline if you're within 10 meters of an enemy. If you're far away from the battlefield and you need to get there quickly, you're in Bloodline. If you need to lunge at an enemy and slow them down. We'll break all that down in greater detail when we cover the abilities, but your stance swap needs to be intuitive. It needs to be second nature. There should never be a moment where you're accidentally in the wrong stance. You're always either gun out or you're bloodthirsty with a sword out on purpose. Okay, those are the skills you need to master. Let's break down his kit one piece at a time. There's a lot of important information here the game doesn't tell you, so listen up. We'll start with his primary fire. Blade has a sword, and he's got a shotgun pistol. These are his two primary weapons. You can swap back and forth using the scroll wheel or the 1 and 2 keys on PC. It's triangle or Y on controllers. The sword has a reach of 4.5 meters, very generous, and it can hit multiple enemies if they're stacked up. The cadence is swing, 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 swing. Swing, 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 swing. Okay, the 3 individual swings, they each do 20 damage. The 2 that are in rapid succession, second in the combo, they do 13 each for a total of 26 damage. I'm going to keep it a buck with you here, guys. I don't use this. Like, I never use this. I would say that probably 95% of the time that I have the sword out, it's because I'm in my Bloodline Awakening state. I don't even use the scroll wheel. I don't use 1 and 2 to swap weapons. I don't do any of that because I just activate Bloodline and it takes me from pistol to sword. I deactivate Bloodline and it takes me from sword back to pistol, okay? I just don't use the regular sword attack. I don't do it unless I am in my Bloodline Awakening state. Your other primary weapon is the shotgun pistol. Within 8 meters, it's basically a slug. At 8 meters, it will then break apart into buckshot. The slug, it can crit, but the body shot damage sucks. Frankly, you should rarely use the pistol up close, even though it's a shotgun. It's only a shotgun after 8 meters. So the game is basically telling you, use the sword up close. But after that, after the slug splits up at 8 meters, it's a different story. It breaks into 12 projectiles that spread apart. Each projectile does 8 damage. It's a maximum of 96 damage to the body, but these do crit as well, which is double that. So that means you can 2-tap squishy targets. This actually makes Blade feel really, really good at sneaking shots past the enemy front line. Let's say you're in a big brawl, you're in a big duel with the enemy team. You can sneak some shots past the enemy front line and pick apart the healers behind them. So you'll see me do this a lot actually. I'll shoot in between the enemies in front to soften up that back line. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, it helps my divers. It creates opportunities for me even to push past the enemy Vanguard, and sometimes you can get a quick pick if you place your shots well. Bing, bing, you hear that audio feedback. But you have to consider that this isn't hit scan. You have to lead your shots. For that reason, I do not recommend holding the trigger down unless you're like shooting an enemy thing, right? Something really big and beefy. But in my experience, it's almost always better to pull the trigger for each individual shot you take with the shotgun pistol. That way, you're more intentional about lining up shots, reloading less, hitting more. For reference, Blade's pistol projectiles have a slightly slower travel time than Bucky's rotor stern pistol, but they travel the same speed as Moon Knight's primary fire crescent dart. So if you use a lot of Moon Knight, it's the same travel speed as his primary fire. Your pistol as Blade is your primary way of dealing damage to anything that isn't right in your face. It's especially good at taking down flying enemies like Iron Man, Storm, and Ultron. Human Torch has a lot more mobility than the others do though, so you'll need to be a little bit more accurate of a shooter when you're trying to take him down. Alright, let's move on to the Daywalker Dash. I love this dash. You have 2 charges. You lunge forward in any direction of your choice up to 15 meters. By the way, pause. That's a huge lunge. Like Psylocke's lunge, I've always thought that was a really generous lunge. You can cover a lot of distance with it. Hers is 3 meters shorter. It's 12-meter lunge. So Blade getting a 15-meter, that's some serious ground you can cover as Blade. Serious ground. There's no cooldown between uses, so you can dash back to back if you feel the need to. Let's say you're in trouble, there's no one on your team nearby, and a lot of enemies. You pull a 180 and you just go dash. Now you're 30 meters away at that point, so it's a great way to get out of trouble if you need to. Now if you're dashing to an enemy, the dash will do 20 damage on collision, but it'll also disrupt enemy movement, like flight. It'll ground a flyer for just a second, or if someone's trying to web zip or dash. So it'll stop the enemy cold in their tracks on impact. So that's useful when trying to kill a Spider-Man, a Venom, a Panther, for example. But then you'll follow up that initial impact either with a pistol shot or with a sword barrage. And it just depends, right? If you have the pistol out when you start the dash, then you're going to use the pistol for the follow-up attack. You'll shoot them at point blank for another 20 damage. That's 40 damage total if you've got the pistol out and you do the dash. But if you have the pistol out, you'll also hit the enemy with a debuff that reduces their incoming healing from all sources by 40%. That's a great choice when you want to whittle down an enemy tank. So maybe that's your choice. Maybe you'll go in with the gun to do the debuff so they can't receive as much healing from their pocketed healer, and now maybe you can take them off the table more easily. That debuff lasts for 3.5 seconds. Pretty nice. But if you have the sword out when you dash, instead, you'll follow up the initial impact with a flipping sword attack that does a total of 60 more damage and inflicts a slow debuff on the enemy for just 1 second. Now, I tend to use the sword strike more than the gun strike, but it really just depends on the context of the fight. If you're attacking an enemy healer inside of their healing ult, hey, maybe you want to use the gun dash, the silver bullet, to reduce their incoming healing, and then try with your team to team them down more easily. But since this dash covers so much ground, you'll also be using this to get out of trouble. You'll be using it to dash past enemy vanguards, past front lines. You'll be using it to get into high places, or just generally to retreat to safety. Now let's move on to the Bloodline Awakening state. Now, if you were spacing out, do me a favor, all right, dial in for a second. Okay, this ability is really, really important. When and how you use it is important. When you activate your Bloodline Awakening, you will turn into a bit of a glass cannon, okay? You'll have faster base movement speed. You'll stow the pistol and you'll pull out the sword instead. It allows you to build up stacks with each hit that you dish out with the sword, up to 10 maximum stacks. Now, every stack will increase your attack speed. The more stacks, the faster your attacks become. So your damage output will incrementally increase until you're just a constant hose of insane damage. Like, none of the gameplay in this video is sped up, okay? You are seeing what 10 stacks looks like in real time. It's lightning fast. Now, there's a lot here, so stay with me. Every 5 hits will trigger a whirlwind slash attack, this flipping slash, that will deal 56 damage. And your Daywalker Dash ability will give you 5 free stacks. Now, that is very, very important to know. You'll notice that basically every time I dash into the enemy, I activate Bloodline Awakening first. Why? Because then I arrive to the fight with 5 stacks. So I basically start the fight with 150% attack speed from the very beginning of the fight. So on PC, every time I go in with the sword, I hit E, Shift, left click. On controller, that would be R1, L1, right trigger, every time. No exceptions, guys, no exceptions. You can turn off Bloodline anytime you need to, so you're not like locked into it or anything. There's no cooldown on this ability. Just turn it on, dash in, start swinging. Turn it on, dash in, start swinging. You'll already have 5 stacks on arrival. Also worth noting that your pistol will reload itself over time while you are in the Bloodline Awakening state, so you can pop off a couple of shots, then go right into Bloodline, and the pistol will reload itself while you're swinging your sword, so when you hop out of that Bloodline state, you've got a fully loaded up pistol ready to go. Now, there's a catch to this Bloodline Awakening state. The catch is that while it's active, you'll receive 40% less healing from all sources, so you debuff yourself from healing. That means healing from your healers, health packs, the spawn room, whatever. But to offset this debuff, you'll also be granted life steal. 60% of the damage you dish out will be returned to you in the form of life steal. So when in this state, the best way to live is to slay, pedal all the way to the floor. Now, obviously, you'll be stealing more HP if you're attacking faster. That's why we always start with the dash to give us 5 free stacks to jumpstart not only our DPS, but also our LSPS. I just made that up. It's lifesteal per second, right? Our Bloodline Awakening flurry of attacks and lifesteal makes Blade scary good at dueling tanks. Just remember to parry their big attacks. More on that in just a moment, but 2 quick tips about Bloodline Awakening. Always activate Bloodline Awakening when you respawn in a spawn room. You'll get faster movement speed for free, meaning you can get back to your team and back to the fight faster. Anytime you aren't in immediate danger, turn this ability on just to cover more ground faster, right? Second tip, turn it on before you pick up a health pack, okay? You'll forget every now and then, and when you do, you'll be like, stupid, why'd I do that? If you don't turn Bloodline off and you pick up a health pack, you'll get a lot less health, right? So turn it off, pick up the health pack, and then turn it back on if you need to once you're topped off. Okay, now we move on to the parry ability, Scarlet Shroud. We touched on this earlier. Okay, right click on PC, left trigger on controller. You'll interrupt anything you're doing and hold up your sword in a defensive posture. You have an energy bar for your parrying. You can hold this parry for up to 2 full seconds if you have maximum energy, and then that will deplete the energy bar. When you let your guard back down, you'll start to recharge your parry energy. It takes 8 seconds to fully recharge it from 0 back to capped out. When you're parrying, you'll block 80% of the damage done to you, which is massive. You can survive Scarlet Witch ults like this, tons of stuff. So definitely be like dialed into not just the damage you're dealing, but also the like tells you see the enemy doing as well. Because when you know what they're about to do, you can make an educated decision in the moment. Is this something that I need to reduce the damage of? Or do I need to save my parry for something different, right? But I will warn you, Psylocke's ultimate, it must be coded differently because you cannot reduce the damage of her ult with your parry. It doesn't work. It'll do 150 damage per hit if you are not parrying it. It will do 150 damage per hit if you are parrying it. It's weird, but I had it happen in a couple of matches and I was like, am I crazy? So I went into a practice range to see if I was crazy, and I was not crazy. You can't cut the damage of Psylocke's ultimate. So you're better off dashing out of it if possible. Now, other than the damage reduction, there are 2 things you have to know. The first one we already covered. The first 0.4 seconds of your parry will be a perfect parry where you will block all CC abilities and you cannot be moved. The second is that blocking damage reduces the cooldown of your dashes. 200 damage blocked is 1 full charge refunded to you. So if you're in trouble and you don't have a dash, start parrying so that you can absorb some damage and get a ton of dash energy back so you can dash out. Do not turn your back to the enemy. The parry only blocks damage to your front and not your back. Using this parry well is all about understanding enemy kits. The better you know the kit of your opponent, the better you'll be at parrying at the right times. You see the haymaker coming in from the thing, right? He's winding up his big punch. You stop your attacks, you parry that one big punch, then you go back on the offense. It's stuff like that that will directly translate to more kills for you and fewer deaths. This parry ability is a core part of what makes Blade Blade in Rivals. And finally, the ultimate. Blade's ult is called 1000-fold Slash. It's a very anime-looking ultimate. You dash forward, leaving a big AoE in your wake that deals constant sword slashes in the air. Enemies caught in the ult will receive a 20% debuff to their incoming healing for 4 seconds. Now, there's a lot going on with this ultimate. Let me unpack it for a sec. It doesn't stick around very long, only 2 seconds. You need to be very picky about when and where you place this ultimate. Choke points, bottlenecks, hallways, those are the best places to drop this. Otherwise, it's good to combo ultimate with people like Groot, Doctor Strange, and The Thing, since their ultimates immobilize enemies, and you can take advantage of that. You'll do 100 damage to any enemy you impact in your dash animation at the beginning of the ultimate, and then the spell field you leave behind will do 225 damage per second after that. You're basically creating a tunnel of pain behind you when you dash. Now that tunnel of pain, it'll be 6 meters wide, 4.5 meters tall. But the ultimate is kind of weird. If you just like spam it, you activate it as fast as you possibly can, and you immediately dash forward, you'll create a short tunnel of pain that is only 10 meters long, a tiny tunnel. But if you activate the ultimate, and then you wait 1 full second while you're aiming it, the tunnel of pain will grow up to 25 meters long. But it's kind of weird because it'll stretch 1 meter behind your starting point and 24 meters in front of you. So keep that in mind too. But all that to say, it's best to wait a full second so you can create a larger tunnel of pain that's, rather than a 10-meter tunnel of pain, sometimes you do need to get that all out ASAP, right? And if the context dictates that's a good thing to do, then sure, do the 10-meter tunnel of pain. But it's almost always better to wait a second and make the ultimate more than twice the size it otherwise would be. The ultimate can also be used to get your team through a choke point if you're like blocked and you're stalled by the enemy in a choke point and you need to sort of push through it. You can use this ultimate to do this. it's a great thing to do. Whew, that's his whole kit. Now he's also got a team up with Cloak and Dagger where he can put down that shrouded bubble just like Moon Knight can. It's a fairly useful team up. If Blade is standing in the shrouded bubble, he can lock onto nearby enemies and leap out with a quick sword strike. Kind of cool. But let's tie all this together. Since Blade can seamlessly swap back and forth from a ranged defensive posture and dash 15 meters into a frenzy of sword attacks, he is constantly dealing damage. And since he's constantly dealing damage, that means he charges his ultimate insanely fast. You'll see some clips in here where I gained 50% ultimate charge in 10 seconds flat. 10 seconds to get half of my ultimate charge is ridiculous. This puts him on par with Moon Knight for ultimates per match. So don't feel the need to be too incredibly conservative with your ultimates. I remember just yesterday I dropped both enemy healers in my Bloodline Awakening state, and the enemy Penny came into this small room on Clintar to finish me off. But since I was in a tiny room and I didn't want to stall our team push, I just solo ulted the Penny straight up, knowing there was no way for her to escape the tunnel of pain in such a tiny space. Sure enough, that match chat lit up, and the dude was like, solo ulting is sad. I had another ult less than a minute later, guys, so it's okay. It's okay to use the ult when you know it will be useful to you and to your team, even if it's to take down one person in the moment of the enemy team. A few more tips before we wrap this one up. When you're in these big brawls on the objective point, you know there's a ton of bodies on the point, right? From both teams duking it out. I recommend finding the enemy supports in that brawl and prioritizing them. Because here's the fact of the matter. Support ults stall the brawl. And we don't want to stall the brawl, we want to win it. And these big brawls, they're easy ways for lots of supports to charge their ultimates quickly. We don't want that. Find them in the crowd, focus them down to minimize their healing potential in that fight because they're busy dealing with you, and ideally take them off the board so they can't drop their ultimate and neutralize your team's opportunity to win the point. So in those big brawls, prioritize those healers. You can take them down very quickly. Also make sure that you're thinking about which ones have things like Luna Snow's Snowball, Mantis's Sleep. As soon as you get a couple swipes in, go ahead and toss in a parry just to make sure they don't throw that ability at you. Next tip. If your healer drops a support ult, then you better be in your Bloodline Awakening state. Your DPS will skyrocket, your sustainability is really high, you're basically unkillable while in a support ult and doing lifesteal. That's even factoring in your healing debuff. And last tip, make sure you use your body to block out and lock down enemies. People overlook this all the time. As Blade, you should always be using your body to dictate where your enemy can and cannot move. So physically push them into a corner or against a wall, or make sure you give them fewer escape options by using your body to block doorways, or to keep an enemy from getting to a support ultimate or a health pack. All melee characters need to be mindful of body blocking as a core tactic in their duels, and Blade is no different. And that is going to be the guide, everyone. I know it was a longer one, but we really did have a lot to cover. There's a ton about Blade that the in-game ability screen simply does not tell you. Stuff that you absolutely need to know if you're going to be worth your salt as a Blade. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, would you let me know by leaving a like in the video, as it's the best free way to support the content right here on YouTube, and consider subscribing for additional Marvel Rivals content. I've got a lot of it planned. If you made it to the end of the video, would you let me know by saying so in the comments so I can leave a heart on your comment just as a way of saying thank you. And if you really want to support me, like, financially, without spending a single dime, go click on my Spider-Man guide I posted last week. It was a sponsored video, and I will get a maximum potential payout if it hits a certain view count that I can't disclose, but I will tell you that we're close. So do me a favor, and just let that play in the background sometime, right? Just pull up my Spider-Man guide, let it play, and that'll actually be a huge help. I mean, you could potentially be paying my mortgage next month just by watching that video. I'm not kidding. Anyways, I love you forever. You're all the best. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.